Welcome everybody to Radicalized, where truth survives, and we got your back. I am Heidi Cuda. I'm here with Jim Stewartson, High Fidelity, Sean Connor, three dads in the fight for democracy, and we are actually recording on Father's Day, and I just want to thank you guys for your dedication to the work and also for just being rad dads.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
We're here to save the kids. Save the kids.
Yes, that's right.
People ask me why I do this. I got three young adults, all boys who are going to be starting their own families, and I want them to grow up in something that's not a fascist hellscape. So, that's literally the point of all of this. At least for me.
I have a 10-year-old daughter that goes with the pronouns he, him. So.
Yeah,
I'm going to make sure that that's a world that's accepting and that allows that to nourish and thrive in that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, beautiful. I know why Hi-Fi does it. I know it's also for his children, and I'm glad you guys got a chance to meet my son's foot when we were in Boston, and also got a chance to meet my daughter recently. Yeah, it was really nice because we all sort of probably keep, our investigative worlds a bit separate from some of the family worlds. It's heavy what we do, but, I told my daughter how much it meant to me that she actually said hello. So anyway, thank you very, very much for joining us on this amazing Father's Day episode. We're going to have a bunch of rad dads.
My daughter.
Really? Hi. Oh, hello.
SB. She's my daughter. Okay.
Oh, hi.
Sorry.
Oh, this is a family show. So if you joined us last week, you got to meet Todd Helmuth, who for me really shed a very important gave me a very important piece of the puzzle, and that is so much of Russian disinformation is designed for us to actually hate each other. So we are going to be exposing more of that and working on more of that. And another one of his colleagues, Ryan Brown, is going to join us today, where we'll be talking about radicalization and addiction, as well as the extreme elements within the military and a few other amazing things. So thank you for joining us today. Why don't we just jump into Frontloaded?
Frontloaded.
Yeah, that's always just so lovely, Connor. So the first item I just want to give you guys a heads up on is that we are going to make a commitment on this show to follow the money. The big grift will be a theme. That's the title of my latest Byline Times report based on the second day of the hearing. And we are going to be following the money because our financial correspondent, Martin Shield, tells us that that's where we're going to find illegal activity. It may not be as sexy as some of the things we would like some of these thugs to be, rounded up for, but it is a tried and true thing. Just ask the ghost of Al Capone what took him down. So that's our commitment to you. We've already been doing it, but we're going to do a lot more of it.
That's right.
Yeah, fuck yeah. I mean, it's like money. It's always about the money, right?
That's
right. Yeah. We've assigned power. I mean, it's really about power, but money is the way you get it.
That's right. And also, we wonder why some of these guys never seem to be sent up for their crimes. People like Boris Johnson, we can look at people like Donald Trump. Well, they have a lot of money behind him, and the money behind them do not want their ability to do their shady deals to stop under a proper functioning democracy. So our commitment to you will always be to look beneath the headlines and not be just reacting to everything, because that's how we lurch and we do nothing, but to look at it and say, where is the money? For example, when Sean sends me a link about Marjorie Taylor Greene bashing Kamala Harris, what she's really doing is trying to raise money from her base. It's a tried and true method. They create and burn witches, and we are going to expose that. Item number 2. Last week, you got to have a little cameo meet up with Adrian Goldberg from Byline Radio. And one of the things that came out of that is he asked me if Trump could be jailed. So I think it's something that's necessary for our country to heal. But I will say I did talk to lawyer Jen Taub, and Jen Taub told me indicted, convicted, yes. jail time, maybe not, perhaps house arrest. But I wanted you guys, A, to weigh in, and B, I wanted to remind our viewers that Paul Manafort's clients never have happy endings, okay? They like end up fleeing revolutions, jailed, they end up dying of dictator heart attacks, they end up under house arrest. So the prognosis for Trump isn't going to be good, I think, no matter what.
I'm hoping for execution for treason.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Listen, just the idea that a man who provably got hundreds of thousands of people dead through COVID neglect, just by itself. Forget about the fact that he is clearly and obviously a Russian fucking asset.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about? No jail. What are we talking about? Like, put him like house arrest. Fuck that. I am not a big proponent of capital punishment, but I'm not completely in disagreement with Hi-Fi. Like, that motherfucker illegally and treasonously took over the country and then did everything in his power to damage it. Fuck that.
Talk about
he goes to jail.
2 words: Nikolai Ceausescu.
Yeah, when Trump uses a kangaroo court in a propaganda stance, that's the first thing I thought of was the way Ceausescu's he and his wife, their unhappy ending. I'm glad we don't live in a country like that, but I also think we need to set standards and precedent for the next generation to go, oh, you don't commit coups.
Nope.
Yes. Right? Like that. Yeah. That is the thing. It's not about punishing Donald Trump. I don't give a fuck, honestly. He's a rancid old bloated shithead somewhere. I don't give a shit. Put him on an island, put him on a buoy somewhere in the middle of the fucking Pacific. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that the people of the country understand that when you do that shit, you get fucking punished.
Yeah, that's why we need to also hold the January 6th committee is doing such a good job. The Eastman, there's got to be some accountability for that, because his notion that the Supreme Court just wouldn't hear the case, right, and that they could still usher that in. I mean, that would have called this. That would have been civil war would have broken out. It would have been horrifying, and he was okay with that. That's not how we transfer power.
That's right.
One of the things I'm going to talk about is Miss Ginny.
Thomas,
who's emailing away with John Eastman.
Yeah.
Like now listen. Right now we've got a 6-3 Supreme Court, but we've got Roberts in the middle, right? Who in the past has done, one or two things that kind of slow down the destruction of humanity and would probably not vote to overturn Roe, right? Ginny Thomas is married to Clarence Thomas. And that's what I'm going to say for now. But holy fucking shit, Clarence Thomas cannot be in the Supreme Court anymore.
No.
And there's no, I don't want to hear any fucking liberal whining about it. Fuck that. That guy needs to go, and Joe Biden needs to put somebody in there. Stat.
Yeah. Well, also, it would be the right thing to do since we were denied a Supreme Court judge thanks to Mitch McConnell's chicanery.
None of those 3 extremists should be in there at all, right?
That's right.
Gorsuch, none of them should be there.
Well, I just want to say we could not have gotten off to a feistier start. I love this show so much, and I love the passion of you gentlemen, and I'm glad we live in a country where we can do this type of reporting. So I am grateful to you. Before we move on to some happy news, I do want to say that I learned I was interviewed today by Adrian Goldberg again from Byline Radio again today, and I learned that Boris Johnson and his crew managed to have a story wiped off the interwebs that was unflattering. And the reason I bring it up is I was able to sing the praises of you guys and explain that the Wayback Machine never forgets. And I will not be surprised.
Sometimes it does.
That's not a fucking problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they can go ahead and wipe it all they want, pretend the story didn't exist.
That's silly. That's silly. Don't
yeah, I know, but
silly.
it's occurring right now in real time, breaking news out of the UK, and I think I'm going to keep my eye on it because, as I told Adrian, I check once a week at least to see if Forbes wiped the Kushner cover from 2016 off its site, because one day that won't exist. But I have a copy, so don't worry.
What's the best way to prove who you are and what you're doing is to try to badly cover your tracks.
Yeah.
I will just say, Susan,
Yeah.
What do you mean? Or put out a 12-page rant with no arguments against the actual discussion.
I'm just going to push out my dogs.
The 12-page Trump rant against January 6th was.
Oh my God!
That's how you prove that's how you prove you're innocent, right?
And I have a video clip of Liz Harrington saying, "But it has footnotes."
So later in the digital,
it's a 12-page document with footnotes. First of all,
so a little bit later we'll talk about citations and how important those are for wiki for Wikipedia.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of happy news now, gentlemen. Happy news goes global. I did a thread with Marty on Happy the elephant, a Bronx Zoo captive who was denied personhood. Marty Scheel, our favorite retired IRS criminal investigator, said that the elephant should be named Happy Inc. So he would qualify as a corporation and therefore get personhood. And apparently international press ate it up, and my tweet had appeared in various places. I don't know if you can still see it or not. There we go. There's Happy. Bogus. I mean, we were in French media. We made it around all over Europe. But I think it's hilarious because Marty's point is well taken. The Supreme Court, if they're willing to make give corporations personhood, why wouldn't they actually give personhood to Happy? So Happy, we're on your side, and so is the rest of the world. And that is all we have for Front-Loaded, gentlemen.
Mitt Romney said it, right?
We are pro-Happy here. Yes.
Yeah, companies are people.
Yeah, they should pay their people.
The reason corporations are considered people is because then you can hold a corporation liable for malfeasance and not the actual actors inside the corporation, namely the board of directors, executive management, things like that.
It's a shield against liability. That's right.
And they've done a hell of a job. It's a hell of a
how do you have people inside a person? That's what I want to know.
It's like
a pregnant person, like with people inside?
It's like a kangaroo gym. They've got a papoose and they put the people in the corporation.
I was actually thinking Empire Strikes Back when Luke cut open the anyway.
All I know is what you just described, Hi-Fi. Sounds like some bullshit. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into word phrase of the week.
Speaking of bullshit, here we go.
Let's see if we can do it. Come on, man.
All right, I'm going to try really, really hard. Remember, I'm Scott and Irish, so this is difficult for me. Our word phrase of the week this week is a German word. It's called Gleichschaltung.
Gleichschaltung.
And actually, I got the inspiration for this word phrase of the week from our favorite scholar of fascism, Ruth Ben-Ghiat. And in America, we discuss it as synchronization, which is kind of the media propaganda being synchronized across channels and spreading out, doing the brainwashing all at once. But in Gleichschaltung, the Nazis in Germany took it a little bit farther. They didn't just want to control the media and what people heard and what people thought. They wanted to control where you shopped, who you bought things from, what corporations were allowed to function. It was an alignment, a synchronization of society towards a fascist goal. And what we are seeing in the United States right now is the GOP version of Gleichschaltung, in that they have 30% of the country who wants to overthrow our country.
It's not only that. I mean, another version of this is dominionism. So dominionism, right, is this idea of these 7 pillars of society: media, culture, I can't remember what they are, government. All of these pillars have to be taken over all at the same time. That in order to get you to Judgment Day, basically, all of these pillars at once have to be taken over, which is just another way of saying Gleichschaltung, I believe.
Yes, and the root word, most German words are they're compound words, and the root of the word gleich means the same, equal. So they're trying to synchronize. It's like when we talk about authoritarian capture. They're not just going after one thing, but many things, and it's in synchronicity.
And it's also Bannon's fire hose of shit, right?
Right.
Like that, the flood the zone with shit. Like it's to take all of these things, from the media to social media to everywhere, all at the same time. So you don't know how to fight it. You don't know what to do, because it's
from a far enough away perspective, and from a far enough away like time, everything's synchronized, right? So if you pull back far enough, you can make anything seem connected.
Right. You're always
but in this case, they really are, right?
Yep. It's that effort.
What we're seeing right now in American society, you see it through Fox News, you see it through OANN, you see it through Newsmax, is what they're trying to do is they're trying to get everyone goose stepping in the same direction, right?
And guys, this is why antitrust is so important, right? This is why, having a multiplicity of voices, having a democracy allows for those voices to express different points of view, so they're not lockstep in the exact same ideology, messaging, and propaganda, to keep everyone, in one lane.
I mean, we can trace this back to when Reagan revoked the fairness doctrine in the 80s.
That's it. Yeah,
sure,
that's right.
Exactly.
And that was intentional.
Yep,
it was.
And that was.
And here we are.
Here we are now.
Yeah. And here we are on Father's Day discussing Nazi theory. I love it. Okay. Dankeschön, baby. So now let's move on to why it matters.
Why it matters.
Wow.
Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why high fidelity?
Just
the hardest one.
Audience.
You really went with it. Okay, cool. You did it.
Just so
the
our
hardest
audience
one, guys.
knows, we never see why it matters until we're actually recording, and so wow.
We had a discussion about the last story, Dave, and Sean just decided to go for broke.
We went with it. All right. First story this week. Hate speech isn't free speech.
Right.
Shout out to Japan, home of my aunt and uncle and my cousins. Japan has recently introduced a law where if you are found guilty of harassment online, of hate speech, of targeted hate of an individual, you are now eligible, if convicted, for up to 1 year in prison.
Nice.
That's pretty sweet, huh?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Well done,
If
Japan.
you fucking psychologically harm somebody on purpose, why is that fucking different than walking up to them and punching them in the face?
It's not.
It is not fucking any different.
Worse.
You can get a fucking year in jail for punching somebody in the face for no reason, that's for sure.
Also, why should it be any different if you're affecting that psychological harm in the physical world versus the digital world? There should be no difference.
That's exactly it, right? And so ultimately, we need laws against harm. I just have to back you up one time. Harmful speech, whether you call it hate speech or not, any harmful speech is not free speech.
Right.
Because the person on the other side of the fucking harm is paying for it.
Yeah.
Somebody's paying for it. It's not the person who's saying it. The person who's saying it is getting the benefit.
Yeah,
that's right.
That is a one-sided contract that should not be allowed.
Well, as an add-on to this story, I would like to add that Vice President Kamala Harris, she announced that, in the wake of school shootings, there will be a presidential commission to research online bullying and hate speech with regards to school shootings. So that's a step in the right direction. It's not as good as a law giving prison time,
right?
But it's a very good step.
Yeah,
and we've already seen the pushback against this from Marjorie Taylor Greene's going on her platform and saying, I just don't understand the connection. I just don't see the connection between harassment. So literally the argument from her was these middle school kids weren't harassing the guy that came and shot them. There's no connection there.
Well, she has to say that for two reasons. One, because this is how they raise money by demonizing people doing good work. And the other thing is it's not lost on anybody that she's the one who trolled victims of Parkland shooting. So we are talking about somebody who is a harasser. Yes, an absolute troll. And one thing I want to say before we move on, gentlemen, is that when I was harmed online and offline in 2018, I didn't have a support group. Nobody really knows what to do with this murky world. And it was very, very, very traumatizing, which is what it's designed to do. So those of you who are enduring this thing, know there is a community. We're part of it. And if you need a support group, you can always email us. People know how to find us, and we can also link you up with other people doing this work. But don't go through it in isolation like I did. It was terrifying.
This shit's real.
I can teach you totally inappropriate ways to respond. So
do not. No, because then Hi-Fi would end up in freaking jail for a year. No, Hi-Fi. No.
All right. Moving on.
I mean, there's always a dungeon that he has to answer for.
Okay, moving on. That's good.
Not going down that road, buddy. Anyway, so story number 2 this week is scientific fuckery. All right, and there's a reason I call this scientific fuckery, and it's about a company called Running Tide. Okay, and Running Tide, their big idea was we're gonna seed kelp gardens throughout the ocean. They're gonna sequester carbon and sink to the bottom of the ocean, and it's gonna be great. Okay, cool idea, except in practical application, did not work at all.
Didn't work.
So Running Tide, their executives are now contemplating a move that has been banned by the United Nations. And this is called ocean seeding, in which they dump a bunch of iron oxide into the environment. Now, this is very touchy science. There's been some experiments, not a lot of data has come back for or against, so it's still up in the air. But it's been banned because it's so controversial. And now this company wants to do this. Now, it's not just scientific fuckery, though. Running Tide is also involved in green scamming. And green scamming is when a company sells carbon credits, supposedly because they're benefiting the environment. This is the same thing that Tesla made way too much money off.
Now, a little distinction. It's not just selling carbon credits. It's anything that you're selling, basically saying it's good for the environment when it's obviously not,
Yeah, and I would use the word greenwashing because scamming has a legal definition, which is probably
well, okay. So
both things are true. You can greenwash your bullshit by just calling it green, or you can scam people out of money specifically by telling them this is a environmental thing and it isn't.
The real problem. The real problem here is that the carbon credit market is bullshit. All right. This is just a way for corporations to shuffle money around, pretend they're doing something for the environment. Meanwhile, we have the worst heat wave in history hitting Europe right now. We're not saving the environment. We're doing something where guys in suits can pat themselves on the back and say, look at all the good we're doing. Meanwhile, people are going to start dying.
Yeah.
They already are. I mean, islands are
Yeah.
disappearing. Like, I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I live next to the Colorado River, and that motherfucker is going to be gone. And that's going to be a major, major problem. I mean,
it's already just so, like it's sad to look at the Grand Canyon sometimes, because
we need to unfuck the world, and we need to unfuck it fast, or humanity's days are fucking numbered. Sorry.
That's just not going to be eating the ocean.
The only way we can do that is if we have a common shared understanding of what the actual world is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's a lot of money in anti-science.
Yes, there is, right? And they will go
it's
after
petroleum. That's correct.
Yeah.
It's the plastics. One word, plastics.
Yeah. I have done so much reporting on this stuff, guys. I did a whole half-hour special on deep sea mining. I did a whole half-hour special on the problem with plastics for Al Jazeera America, and you guys are all
microplastics are in our blood now. Yeah,
you're 100% correct that we need that shared narrative. There's so much fossil fuel money that goes into our by design lack of understanding of science. So follow the show, kids. We got the answers. All right, this is the worst headline ever.
It is
ever.
Our third story this week: TikTok, Oracle jumps on China's jock. Can't believe we came up with that headline. All right, what is this about? Well, guess what, folks? Turns out that the social media app TikTok, all of its user data, recordings of 28 meetings came out between TikTok and ByteDance. China's government is accessing TikTok user data. Congrats. Yeah, this was huge. This was bad. Oh, that apparently made Heidi so scared she had to leave. But here's what's really, really bad, and even worse as far as I'm concerned, is that now all of TikTok's user streams and data will be hosted on Oracle servers inside the United States. And everybody's like, hey, that's great. It's in the US. No.
But hold on, Hi-Fi. We have to ask you. Oh, no, but didn't Trump try and do this? Is that right?
Trump tried to do this. There was talks with Microsoft and Oracle. But here's the problem with Oracle. There are people inside of Oracle who are tied to the network behind January 6th. Yeah. And that's a real problem.
Yeah.
And if you remember, Trump tried to push this through, right? When he was in office, just sort of quickly get his buddy, Ellison, is that his name?
Larry Ellison is his name.
To get the contract for this data. And that didn't happen. And so it was on pause. And now Biden apparently is letting this get through.
And
so
Larry Ellison also put $1 billion into Musk's bid for Twitter. They are two peas in a pod. Oracle is effectively a right-wing organization. Like all of its moves, it hired Ezra Cohen-Watnick as its chief salesman for Israel.
Yeah.
So again,
guess who he met and went and met with? Netanyahu. Like fucking straight up. Like that it had nothing to do with software, that whole meeting. That's not what's going on here. Oracle has been cooperating with some of this shit.
Yeah.
So talk about another right-wing synchronization is the left and tech, right? The left has technology. Bullshit. I mean, there's some of the most pervasive, biggest tech companies are owned and run by right-wing.
Yeah, that's really
Mark Zuckerberg is just a Peter Thiel robot. I'm sorry.
I mean, just go down the list. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Speaking of Facebook, everybody needs to read Caitlin Flanagan's Sheryl Sandberg story in The Atlantic that dropped yesterday. Oh my God. It is really, really important. She said straight up, I'm not sure we're going to be able to recover from the stuff that she did as a world. So please read that article.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would like to say to our audience right now, if you still have a Facebook, download all your data and delete it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, and yes, folks, Instagram is Facebook.
So I'm gonna talk about liars in Hellscape, and what you need to know is where you are at any given time, and what the lying landscape is. And on Facebook, it's fucking huge.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's orchestrated from the software, from the website itself.
So thank you for that incredible news block, Hi-Fi. And before we move on to brief legal briefs, I just want to say that just like Highlights magazine at the dentist office when you were a kid, and there would be like, find the bunny in the tree, every episode somebody says Ezra Cohen Watnick. So that was the moment.
I'm pretty sure that somebody's always me.
However, do not ever give children access to our show at the dentist's office. That's just a bad idea.
Maybe. Okay, so brief legal briefs. This is very important. Thank you again, Hi-Fi. Stellar work.
Brief legal briefs.
All right, guys.
That's the first time I've
so today is not specifically focused on Elon Musk, but I was curious in light of the Dogecoin $258 billion lawsuit that was filed.
Wait, what was the number you just said?
258 billion.
Yeah, exactly the amount of money it cost to throw an insurrection, allegedly.
Well, also just about Elon Musk's total net worth, by the way.
Yeah. So this is the Dogecoin complaint. We can get into that in a second. But I was curious.
No, this is million. This is million. This is a quarter million.
Oh, this is millions?
Not billion, yeah.
Yeah, billions. Yeah, millions. My bad.
Yeah.
So
Jesus,
we
was
have
like, I was gonna say that's his entire
billions.
network.
Yeah, my bad.
Either way, it's a lot of cash.
That's right.
Yes.
And the point that I was making was that he's been getting sued a lot lately. Obviously, he was trying to recruit attorneys via Twitter, right, for his own little legal counsel. So I was curious about how much he's been sued and why he's been sued. So this is Pacer Monitor we use, and for work. Anyway, so he's 54 civil lawsuits, and the majority of these lawsuits are SEC commodities fraud, as you would expect. But the thing I found very interesting was that the next highest number of suits were civil rights lawsuits, which is not a good look. It can be a variety of things, but it's kind of telling that you have this distribution in 24 SEC violations, and the next closest one is civil rights violations, which they just lost one in California, and they have to pay a woman $5.8 million for a the work environment, the racist work environment.
Stop the press. If I have to interrupt you, you were not wrong, Connor, and you were not wrong, Jim. He is suing in the billions.
It is billions, right?
I am shocked.
Yeah. You guys, come on, man. You gaslit me on my own show. No, I'm just,
I was like,
it is.
I did. My bad, but I cannot believe it. But you know what? I'm actually not surprised, because imagine how many suckers lost money on that.
Yeah, that's the kind of money we're talking about with
wow.
Like Bitcoin is in trillions in market cap. Like this is really
it was
big money.
258 billion, which now is that's a statement, right? They're attempting to make a statement. Go ahead, type in. What's up?
I just wonder, how much longer do you think Tesla shareholders and the Tesla board of directors are going to put up with this bullshit?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's down fucking half. I mean,
that guy needs to just go the fuck away. Sorry.
It's he's going to have some trouble. This is a lot. I mean, the cost, and this is just with Elon Musk as a party. Obviously, this is Tesla suits where he's also named. But these are not great numbers. Looking at the spread here, the suits and the nature of the allegations.
There's also the guys who sued about the Twitter, about his tweets recently, and trying to block the Twitter deal because it's killing Tesla.
The shareholder, exactly. Yeah, he's increasing the market value of Tesla.
And then it comes out that he had to pay $250,000 to a lady who he offered to buy a horse for. You remember that?
Yeah.
And then he made fun of it. I think we're gonna have some fun with that later. Actually,
what I found was interesting. When people were talking about that, I sent the clip into a chat, but there was Elon Musk is a very public figure, and if there were any reports of any sexual wrongdoing, they would have already come out by now. And I'm just his trial in the UK, the concierge of Amber Heard's building testified that she had bruises after he spent the night.
Yeah.
So obviously,
I don't want
to. Let's move on to Hellscape. But that was just so there's that distribution of lawsuits in those areas are very, very telling. So that was the idea.
I have a feeling there's a lot more of them coming.
Yeah. You ready for Hellscape, guys?
Let's do it.
Jim Stewartson's Hellscape. Oh, fuck.
The best.
I love now that I'm on my laptop doing this and I can see it.
It's so good.
It's so great. I feel so powerful right now.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about liars for a bit. It occurred to me that lies are really the common denominator to all of this, right? If you really want to separate out the good guys and the bad guys, the good guys, for the most part, and no one's perfect, right? For the most part, don't lie to you on purpose, right? But the bad guys do. They fucking lie to you. Now, and I'm 53, and I've been around, and I come from Maryland where we would cuss your ass out, but we didn't lie to people. That was just fucked up. That was just one of those things, like, like if there was that kid who was a liar. Remember that? Remember how it used to be a bad thing? How your parents used to, be upset with you if you were a liar? That's changed, fundamentally changed. And let's look at the sort of quintessential version, Donald Trump.
Yep.
How many lies did the Post get? Like 30,000?
Yeah.
What's the count? I'll look up the count. Yeah.
It's in the tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Where it became normal for the president of the United States to lie directly to the American people all fucking day long. Now that
it's over 31,000 over 4 years.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's propaganda.
So think about that. It's not just the cumulative effect of the lies, it's modeling the behavior that it's okay to do so.
Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly right. Yep. Very good point.
So his entire flock got the idea in their head that it's fine to lie.
Yeah.
So a little team exercise. I warned you that there would be an activity.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you did.
What are some different words for lies?
Oh God, we exhausted it during the falsehood is number one. Yeah.
Fib.
Obfuscation.
Deception. Deception.
How about this? Disinformation, misinformation, malinformation.
Propaganda. Yeah.
Propaganda.
Right.
Just a little white lie. There's a distinction in lies. There's a little white lie. Yeah.
Well, white lies also groom people for the big lies. So white lies, when you have a professional propagandist, are part of the huge danger and huge.
I'm just saying, culturally, it's interesting that there's another word for just a little lie, but there's no word for bigger lie. Because like Tim was saying, just lying was bad enough, right? So we made a word for just a little one, but the big ones are bad enough.
That's right. But so here's the thing, right? And when you said bullshit to somebody, right? It used to mean something. It used to be like a serious thing. Like somebody would say a sentence to you and you'd say, bullshit. It was like a shock because you were calling them a liar. And people would get in fights and shit. Do you call me a liar? Like, that has seems to me largely gone away, and I think there's a reason for it. The reason is the internet. Honestly, technology has allowed us all to connect to one another, right? But it has allowed us to connect to one another in ways that prevent any consequences from what we say or do, right? Like if you're gonna lie to somebody or harm them, you'd have to like put a fucking like disguise on, right? Like you put a fucking mustache on and go like do whatever kind of criminal shit you were gonna do. Now you just get an account, you get a new account and go do whatever you want and harm whoever you want, right? So it became vastly easier to lie. Right? Not only at the individual level, but at the organized level. And so we've got this environment where it's much easier to lie, right? Now that doesn't mean that that everyone is going to go around lying, but here's the pernicious part, right? All it takes is a few people to take advantage of that, right? A few people take advantage of the line. Why? Why do they do it? Because it gives them a competitive advantage, right? It gives them the ability to accumulate power at the expense of others. What's that called? It's called fascism, right? That it is an engine for fascist behavior, for sociopathic behavior, because it gives people the way to lie with no consequences. So so once more people do it, it becomes even easier. Right? So now you've got more people out there doing it, and not only, at least in your group, not only does it become fashionable to lie, it becomes difficult not to, because everyone else is fucking doing it, right?
That's right.
Like the competitive advantage that you get from being able to just lie to people about shit, it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. And so part of my initial shock when I came into this was going to QAnon Twitter and seeing lies, 100% lies, 360 around me, right? And that was that is the result of this process where I'm lying, you're lying, I kind of have to lie now to be part of the group. And now once I do it, the group comes in and swoops their fucking arms around you and tells you how awesome you are, and likes you and retweets you and invites you to their parties, whatever the fuck, right? And now the lying has been rewarded, right? So now you're in a big group of liars. Now somebody from the outside comes around, right? Comes around and says, that's bullshit. Those are lies. What are you talking about? No, at that point, they're the liar. Because everybody around you agrees with you. So that means that they're the liar. So there is this fundamental churn that makes it available to people to be deceptive. And they get better and better at it. They get more organized about it. Their techniques and their tactics get stronger and better. And we're not fucking doing anything about it.
Well, we have a Lugan Press. I mean, yeah.
So, Sean, can you bring up that that article?
Sure can. Here we go.
So I'm gonna fucking rant for a sec.
Quick rant.
What
Yep, quick rant.
Last 5 minutes. No, I'm just kidding.
What's that? What did you say?
I said, what have you been doing the last 5 minutes? What was that?
That wasn't a rant. That was the preamble.
You think that was a rant?
Bring it.
Come on.
Bring it.
Have
Let's
you
do
met
this.
me? Oh,
Yeah, I know.
And this will be a good way to. This will pave the plate, Jim, for the guests. So this is a good segue as you get into this.
But look at this fucking headline. U.S. is worried. What the fuck, man? Did the U.S. turn into Susan Collins? The Susan Collins is worried about Russia using new efforts to exploit divisions in the 2020 midterms. Now, I was pissed off about this fucking article, and I was screenshotting it so I could rant about it. And literally at the same time I fucking screenshot it, Mike Flynn comes up with some shit targeting McCarthy because McCarthy is not treasonous enough for him, right? Because McCarthy didn't go along with his fucking plan on 1/6. General Flynn is Putin's general and has been since 2014, 2015 at the latest. All he fucking does is work for Putin. All this whole goddamn fascist insurgency that we're dealing with every day is fueled at a minimum, if not directed and funded by Vladimir Putin. It's unconscionable to me that we're still in this fucking part where we're terrified to actually just look around at the goddamn Russian propaganda coming out of everyone's mouth.
Yeah.
Mike Flynn is not hiding it all day long. He says out loud, Ukraine is full of Nazis. Putin is awesome. Like, it's just right there in the open. And what is his project? Can you scroll down a little bit? Flynn's project is to destroy the 22 elections. I wrote that fucking 2 months ago. Why are we starting to get worried about it? It's happening all day long. People's minds are getting sucked into Big Lie 2. Big Lie 2 is that democracy doesn't work.
Right.
That's the next big lie. And the way they're going to get to democracy doesn't work is by destroying the 2022 elections. It's not complicated. It's fucking in public. So why is CNN, why is the U.S. government putting out these fucking lies? They either they're incredibly incompetent or they're just not telling the truth. Look here, from a U.S. official. Little has been done to inform, let alone convince American voters that Russia is trying to attack elections again. What do you mean trying, first of all? Second of all, what the fuck do you mean you haven't informed us? Why not? Inform us. Why is it the four of us and our friends who do this just because they care? Why is it us? What do we have to tell you? What the fuck is going on? So, look, I'm now going to calm down. Thank you for listening to my rant. You may close the article. Thank you. My emotions are now under control.
You got it now? You get
Censored.
Get it out, man.
But I cannot be more insistent that our government needs to face this. It needs to face the fact that there is a wave of lying, right? And where is the lying coming from? Where's the lying coming from? It's coming from this fascist insurgency. Where's that coming from? It's coming from Putin. It's coming from Flynn. It's coming from Prince. It's coming from Bannon. It's coming from Musk. We've got to get our fucking head out of the stand, stop being worried about it, and start doing something. Thank you. And that is Hellscape.
Yeah, buddy. Well said.
Thank you,
Great
Jim.
set.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Good
perfect segue to our incredible guest, Brian Brown, who does this type of investigative work for a living. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Ryan,
we learned so much from your colleague Todd Helmus last week. We had a brief interview with him, and he dropped some knowledge that for me was game-changing, in that he said that his studies of Russian propaganda and their techniques really is to push us all further to extremes, removing the center, and have us hating and warring against each other, the old divide and conquer routine. But the way he put it, I hadn't heard it like that before, and that is why I'm so grateful that you're coming back, that, you know, a member of your crew is coming back to drop some knowledge on multiple things with us. But first of all, please give our audience an introduction, and then we're all going to fire away with some questions based on some of your research.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I'm an anthropologist and a public health researcher by training. I joined RAND about 12 years ago, partially a late trajectory into national defense and counterterrorism work inspired by 9/11, and immediately started doing counter-terror, then counterinsurgency during the Iraq and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and then more recently disinformation and counter-violent extremism research. Todd was one of my main entry points into that work. And I've always been fascinated by what drives people to violence and other destructive and self-destructive behaviors. So I kind of take a epidemiological human social cause perspective on these things and try to draw insights across these different but not that different worlds of terrorism, insurgency, disinformation, extremism. So Todd briefed you on our NIJ report last week, which focuses on radicalization and de-radicalization. I helped lead I led a spin-off of that report that looks at extremism and addiction and the overlaps in neural mechanisms and so forth.
And that's where I wanted to start with you. Last week we talked about extreme forgiveness, and we've talked on this show about radical empathy. I come from a world of sobriety and sobriety training, and so I've often seen those cues of addiction when I've looked at radicalization. And can you give our viewers just a few sort of like bullet points on what your research has taught us?
So what we did is collected some insights based on what I would call research on vengeance and the experience of grievances in the brain, and then also in the wild, in the social environment. In terms of the neural pathways, there's a shared component for violence and experiencing vengeance or fantasizing about vengeance. And this is just because evolution has set us up this way, right? We've survived as humans because we've defeated other groups. And so there's a pleasure pathway the same way there is a pleasure pathway for sugar or eating fat or doing other things that, or sex, or doing other things that can create addictive cycles. And so research has shown that this also has a habituation component. So the same way that you can habituate to heroin, you can habituate to the pleasurable effects of sort of imagining vengeance, but the compulsion is still there. So it helps kind of explain why it can be feel or be compulsive to keep seeking out, reading QAnon materials, for example, because it sets up a circumstance in which you're an aggrieved party, you need to do something to defend weak people, that need your help and are being attacked by a sort of monstrous other, and that's a very addictive cycle psychologically.
It's also there's also the sort of group love effect, right? Which is very drug-like, like where you can they come in and basically love bomb you, and it feels really good, even if it's a bunch of racists doing it, like if you're open to that, it becomes a very powerful part of the loop.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the individuals we interviewed for our report, people get hooked in different ways. You can get hooked by the propaganda. This individual got hooked by street violence. And there's a coherence in street violence in that, you have your in-group. So you're experiencing the defeating and beating up the out-group, and then all having beers and bonding over how well you did, or even the injuries you got. It's a similar sort of dynamic, and it includes both the love of the in-group and the hatred of the out-group, and the way it bonds you together. So unfortunately, it's human nature.
Scapegoating is almost a necessary component to this kind of thing. Yeah.
So Ryan, when you're looking at something like Eric Hoffer's The True Believer, right, which was a real eye opener for me, it sounds like what you're saying is similar as addicts. There's this personality type or brain functioning that's predisposed to I guess become addicted to these types of movements, these mass movements that fulfill that part of the brain, much like an addict would be fulfilled by, alcohol.
I think that probably is a piece of things. There is some, individual difference that is more or less set, depending on how you believe genetics work. But
I wasn't necessarily talking about genetics and predisposition, more of the fact that these conditions are in place, and then they take the brain over, and then result in these addictions. Yeah.
And being a young male, obviously, has its own biological predispositions or psychological predispositions to being attracted more to the violence. I think that's something we haven't looked at, that I haven't seen a lot of studies try to break down, which are what are the recruitment pathways for a propagandist versus a leader, an organizer versus a street soldier of one of these movements. And they seem to involve different archetypes, I guess, different pathways,
different timeframes in their maturation, right? Like we're seeing these mass shooters be of a certain age, typically, an underdeveloped brain, right? Younger than 25, say, and that results in certain hormones and chemistries and brain functioning that is either available or not available. So they would get recruited in a certain way that would speak to those, those interests, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, QAnon, for example, is really a gateway to other more dangerous belief systems, right?
Yeah.
It will funnel people who are into guns and into military down the militia route, right? It'll take women and send them down the save the children route, right? Yep. But it all comes from the same sort of online group behavior, most of it around 4chan and 8chan.
Mm-hmm. In my studies of gang culture too, I asked some of the guys who got out of the life, how did they do it? And both the ones who were the leaders tended to be a bit brainier than some of the foot soldiers. And then they also were some of the ones who would have that light bulb moment, or that, that interaction from somebody that would get them out. But a lot of times it kind of had to do with intellectual abilities as well. I think it's just so incredible, because what I love about your analysis of looking at extremism and addiction is we know from those who have recovered that there are ways out of this, and there are steps that people can take if they do want to recover. And it was interesting in your report how you sort of were describing what we call a relapse, which is like they know it's bad, they have shame for even being involved in it, and yet they can't stop going back and partaking. Or even when they don't want to, they flip their lid and attack somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it still scratches an itch in the brain or in your biological system somehow, right? So it feels good, and the same way that stress can make one turn back to substances, it's easy to get just into that mindset. So we had individuals talk to us about these kind of euphoric bodily symptoms that you can get watching a riot and thinking about how or a protest and how you might be able to help fight the other side. And so absolutely, it's that kind of lifelong struggle with a certain neural pathway that's been reinforced so many times, but leads you to bad places. It really requires, I think, a kind of buddy system, and a lot of the former extremists we've talked to are constantly in touch with each other. They have a trusted network. They're also working, a number of them are working on bringing others out, and so they continue to grow and reinforce that network and kind of reinforce the lessons they've learned in getting out of the movements themselves.
That is classic recovery system, being of service to others. That is one way that people stay well. I love that. Any other things that you want to make sure we talk about before we move on to a couple other things? Because your work is so fascinating that we would like to, mine as much as we can.
Yeah, I would say the only other thing we've learned, and really from our partners, is that there is, in this recovery trajectory, there are risks of being pulled back into the same ideology, but also risks of being pulled into other ideologies.
Yep.
So we've had, anonymous descriptions of going from far right to far left to foreign causes. And just kind of bouncing among these, like, I'm going to fight the people I was working with before because they're wrong. And so there's an internal struggle not getting resolved there somehow.
That's really good.
Do you look at Jenny Thomas? Comes to mind. She was
exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Well, Mickey Willis, the guy that did the Plandemic, I knew him from his far left, progressive days.
Yeah.
And when I saw that he was the one that produced this, I was like, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah. And next thing you know, he's in the Capitol.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
right, my turn.
Yes.
My turn. First off, thank you for rocking that kick-ass beard, bro. Appreciate it. Second thing,
I'm just a pretender.
No, man, you're good. You're good. In some of your research, you talk about regions of hate inside the United States, right?
Yes.
And these are areas that are less diverse. They have a lot of poverty, obviously rural. There's less demographic shift. It's a white county, it'll stay a white county, that kind of thing. But also less education, and those correlate with a higher incidence of hate groups. And I was wondering, have you seen any action designed by the government or NGOs or anything to kind of stop this cycle of poverty, ignorance, hate, violence?
So there's an organization called Muflahun that started countering Islamic extremism, and they're doing some pilot work, I think funded by DHS, to dig into those local pathways of hate or acceptance of hate or support for hate or whatever is happening at the sort of demographic but also the institutional level, because often, right, things run so deep in a particular county that maybe you have some selective avoidance of enforcement or other happening. So they're actually using an AI type model because there's so much county level data and demographic data in the US to zero in on some locations and try to understand what the local dynamics are and try to counter them. And they're using a very inductive strategy, which I think is right, because when you look at the demographic patterns of the January 6th attackers, the initial analyses suggested, there's some interesting things, like they did seem to experience a great replacement dynamic at the county level, like there was a loss of the white population compared to other categories. But as you start getting deeper into the data, those things kind of fall, those main effects fall apart, and so it's definitely not just red states. It's definitely not just blue states. It seems to be states that are kind of like right poised on the balance, and there's something about
swing
dynamic
states. Swing states.
Exactly.
You're an expert in Russian disinformation as well, right? Like, there's the reason why they try and red pill swing states is pretty clear, right? Because they're trying to change the electoral nature of the country. I wanted to make sure that we get a chance to ask you about connecting to all this, radicalization in the military. Because radicalization in the military, for me personally, is the scariest thing that I can imagine, because the U.S. military is the largest kinetic killing force ever assembled on Earth. And if it gets in the wrong hands, or a significant part of it, goes rogue, we have an existential problem. Huge. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on how bad it is and what to do about it.
Yeah, so we got into this topic a little bit with one of our partners, Beyond Barriers, the leader of which had actively recruited military and veterans and police for 30 years in what was then the largest Nazi party in the U.S. So we got some insights from, I guess, kind of collectively what his experiences were trying to do this. And I think the encouraging thing is that well-integrated active duty military do not seem to be particularly vulnerable or susceptible to extremism. So he described recruiting folks on their way into the military and then losing touch. These are people that were looking for meaning, maybe join a far-right group, and then as soon as they got in the military, were exposed to a different sense of purpose, and were frankly force associated with a broad diversity across demographic categories in the U.S. The vulnerable points seem to be those as we know from case studies, who are not doing that well career-wise, or who leave and experience that loss of purpose and then can get sucked in. So
wow.
You get veterans sometimes, folks who are not, who are a little more at the fringes.
I did read a study saying that the largest recruitment times for hate groups, white supremacist groups, are during war times. So when there is wartime for the United States, they see their numbers go up tremendously, which then they reflected and said, well, we've been in this stretch of war for 20 some odd years, resulting in these bigger numbers for Proud Boys and these groups around the country. The sort of the corollary is what the paper was getting at, but it would make sense that the lack of purpose coming back, and then looking around finding, okay, the new enemy is now liberals or progressives or whatever is the way.
Without a way to reintegrate. I mean, you get it internationally too. You get if there are wars in sub-Saharan Africa or in the Middle East, a lot of these combatants are battle hardened or experienced. They've survived, so they're really good. They are lucky and or good, and they get sucked into the next conflict. So it really speaks to a need for us to do better by our veterans and to look at that transition process, because it is often extremely difficult. But I would say that when don't have a full population representative look, for example, at support for extremism in the military or among veterans. We're working on it, but anecdotally, it is really at those fringes where there's more concern. And inside the military, when you're at sort of peak professionalism, the more and more folks we talk to about this, there's not a lot of concern at those high levels of performance. It doesn't mean that it's still you can still acquire skills, organizational skills, tactical skills, commitment to a cause, all kinds of things that are dangerous in the hands of extremist groups. There's no question.
Yes. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on that and following up on that. I would like to make sure that we cover one of the things I know that you've done recently is there's two things I want to make sure that we get to do while we have you here. One of them is that you've done a lot of work on foreign COVID disinformation impacts domestically. And the other thing, I'm just very interested in the work that you do with Native American communities. That's very near and dear to my heart.
Yep.
Sure. I can talk about our COVID. We did a fair amount of COVID disinformation analysis on foreign news sites, and I think Todd talked about the sort of Russian playbook already, which is divide, make people more extreme. We have a variety of linguistic analysis tools we've leveraged to try to get at the sort of shape of that and do better at detection. So kind of things you would expect, like more negativity, more emotional language when covering the same topics. The other thing that we found was that on the Russian side, at least, there seemed to be these bursts of concerted activity to push specific conspiracy theories. So around like the vaccine trials being faulty, or other things like that. So they're pretty sophisticated. China does not look so sophisticated. They often look kind of comical in some of their efforts, but it doesn't mean they can't get better at doing this. And they're mostly kind of like Russia is doing reputation laundering, on Ukraine right now. During the COVID epidemic, they were mostly concerned with reputation laundering.
Okay.
So I saw when I was looking
That's
when
interesting.
when COVID was going on, there was the graphene oxide conspiracy theory, or about the 99% of the vaccine was from had graphene, and I think it was from a Spanish guy, and I'd never seen Spain sort of come in. It was a professor in a Spanish university, and his website, the literal name of his website, translated into fifth column, which was fascinating. But it was the first time that I'd seen Spain. When he worked at the university, had to put out a statement and disown his claims. But it was strange. Just I had never seen Spain enter into the sort of global discussion before, but it came from everywhere, it seemed.
Yeah.
And Russia is just very good at, I think, Rand researcher Mary Matthews called like a fire hose of falsehood, but they are really putting a lot of well-honed expertise to. They understand us quite well.
A lot better than we do. Yeah, totally. And
they're able to recruit assets, quite well, and to do it at various levels. Right, you're not like a full, traitor to Russia, but you're just you amplifying useful idiots. Let's just say.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Boy, we know some of those.
Yeah. And, and they're really good at doing it online. So in our Australia, we did an analysis for Australian government foreign affairs, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and we saw what looked like an audit trail of a Russian disinformation expert grabbing a real article from Canada on potential drug shortages, and then quoting it wholesale, posting it on hundreds of other websites that look legitimate, and targeting it at a Western diaspora who might be vulnerable to fear about drug shortage. So it's really creative work, and there are just no moral boundaries whatsoever, and so it's very effective. Unfortunately,
yep, there's no downtime. They're always at war, so there's always or
yes,
at least
that's right.
How do we? I went on a rant earlier about this sort of lack of urgency or information, that's coming about this threat, right? About the fact that there is a huge amount of Russian influence, right? And it does, like you say, it doesn't mean they're getting paid in rubles or something in a Bitcoin account or something like that. It means that they are being influenced by somebody or some group to put out what effectively adds up to Russian disinformation, right? That there's Nazis in Ukraine, whatever it happens to be. How do we get the message out that is real and people need to be aware of it in order to be safe, right? In order to have an information landscape. How do we get the word out?
Yeah, I was thinking about it as you were talking, because I mean, what the problem with these moving targets is, as soon as you label them, they change.
Yeah.
And they use, so it instantly becomes a joke, right? Amongst the the far right, it was a joke that Russia was, so like, come on, they're not doing this. They're essentially,
Trump goes Russia, 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 over and over again, like it's a joke.
And the same thing happens with labeling other threats, labeling China as a threat, for example. It's easy to certainly kind of ridicule this because they're so good, especially Russia is so good at concealing its actions.
Yeah.
I mean, in the national security enterprise, right, you get an understanding of how deep this runs because you see the cyber threats, you see, you sometimes experience direct targeting or recruitment, by foreign entities, and it's like, it's real. You see it as real, and I don't know how we get the American, and the global population as aware of that, because precisely what you're describing. The instant someone comes up with some evidence, whether with redactions or not, it gets ridiculed, and something else that's false gets put in its place and promoted.
Yeah,
and the counter brings up that.
One thing we do is we stop supporting networks that continue to put propagandists on TV. One of the darkest moments in history recently was when Kellyanne Conway introduced alternative facts. She still goes on CNN. So how are we going to have a shared narrative when propagandists are still getting equal face time? That is not a way toward truth. But gratefully, the January 6 hearings, in my mind, at least for those tuning in, are seeing, truth arm wrestle propaganda down to the mat and take some of that time back. We only
can't wait
have
for them to say the
1 or
word
2 more
Russia.
minutes. Yes, I know. Well, we'll see. We only have a couple minutes left, but go Bears. I saw that you were a Cal Bear, and that makes me so happy because so am I. And I know, never just always be a bear. But I spent a lot of time in what's that?
I'm a UNC Tar Heel by undergrad, but I'm a Bear by my postdoc, so I'm split.
Yeah.
We're undergrad rivals because I went to Wake Forest, so I'm a Demon Deacon.
Oh, like this guy Ryan went to like 4 different amazing schools, but I spent a lot of time.
I went to Montgomery High School.
Nice. Super quick. I spent a lot of time in the Southwest over the last year, and really learned a lot and interviewed a lot of Native American people along the way. And what is your work that you do, and what can you just kind of tell us in a minute to sort of summarize some of the things that you do in your work with Native American culture?
So, most of that recently has been on substance use prevention efforts, but it has a cultural dynamic, I guess, or element. And a lot of programming has kind of been developed for so-called urban Native Americans who have left the reservation, and are adapting to, the pace of urban life, or specific tribes on specific tribal lands. And so I'm involved in some efforts to try to bridge the gap, because there are these 2 worlds that the Native American youth have to adapt to. Yeah. And a lot of the programming doesn't adequately address living in a rural area right next to a reservation, bouncing back and forth. And so it's of a whole different flavor, I guess, but it has some overlap in terms of the substance use angle.
Well, one thing I think is really important, thank you for that, it's very important for our viewers to know, is you and Todd and probably other members of your team, your experience and expertise was in addiction, substance abuse, and many of you just saw this extremism growth in our own country and began to use your talents to figure out what the heck was happening there. And we at RadPod are very grateful to you for doing that work, because your insights are very invaluable to helping get the word out that what's occurring in our country in real time.
I will say, just briefly too, our third partner, Rajiv, is a suicidologist.
Yeah.
And interested in this because of the overlap between destructive and self-destructive behaviors. And obviously we see it in attacks too. It ends in suicide by cop or suicide with some of these mass attacks. So
Absolutely.
Or cyberbullying and online, right? These
Yeah.
like we've talked, this suicide trolling has just been horrific.
Well, I guess we know who we're bringing on next because
Yes.
we want to continue these conversations. So,
All right,
Hi-Fi,
hold on.
last word.
Last word, and this is something that I lost a few friends to the opioid epidemic, over the last decade or so. And one of the things you put out there is that median income in which a person, in the area in which a person lives, correlates with substance abuse. But from your other research, it also correlates to, again, we were talking about undereducated, hate group. And I noticed as I was one day looking at maps of the opioid distribution and rural areas and red voters and hate groups. And it seems like there's a correlation. Do you see that or no?
I think there may be some areas of overlap. I want to be careful in saying that, how much of an overlap there is, because that's the reason we just submitted a proposal to study these substrates. I think that poverty, so things like, persistent concentrated poverty, inequality, these other core drivers, they are definitely going to be driving rates of all kinds of things, including violence and including in some cases extremism. But it's sort of like these life pathways, a little bit of flavoring over here or a little reorientation can change the pathway, or a different context. It may be joining a gang versus becoming, a hardcore substance user versus becoming an extremist. There's a lot of right time, right place in there. And so I think with these basic social functioning and social support mechanisms, if you better those, you will better all of those outcomes. And in some places more one thing than the other.
Yeah.
I don't know. Address it. So it's kind of a non-answer. I think there is some overlap, but we just don't. Yeah. It's too early to tell.
It's so nuanced.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to that report. And for those who want to follow your work, you can look for RAND.org publications research and look for Ryan Andrew Brown. And we are so grateful to you for spending this time with us.
Ryan.
And we look forward to continuing these conversations. They're so incredibly helpful.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
You do. Cheers. Yeah.
Keep rocking the beard, bro.
See you, Ryan.
Oh, these guys are so brainy. I love it. And I'm so glad. We'll just keep watching their reports. And yes, we need to interview a suicidologist. Boy, do we have questions. Wow. Wow.
Boy, do we have to work on
All right.
on our SEO, so we'll get ranked and stuff.
So after
suicidologists,
after this really, really brilliant interview, which I know, like, I'll listen to it again and all of a sudden I'll pick up more things and hear more things, which is what happened with our Todd Helmuth interview. But now we should have a digital dissent.
We do have one, yeah. We have one. So this one comes with a legal disclaimer at the beginning, just just cover our bases. All right, here we go.
The following is based on actual tweets published by Elon Musk from June 8th to June 18, 2022. Other than Elon, all names, characters, and incidents portrayed in this cartoon are fictitious. No identification with actual persons living or deceased, places, buildings, and products is intended or should be inferred. No person or entity associated with this cartoon received payment or anything of value or entered into any agreement in connection with the depiction of tobacco and or vape products. No animals, aliens, artists, skeleton dogs, or personal feelings were harmed in the making of this silly little thing.
Play video games wherever you want. Civilization is sterilized. I love Fred Astaire. True experts even read wiki citations. Gas station lighting is brutal. If Little Red Riding Hood was on psychedelics, this whole story makes a ton of sense. At this point, I should just wear a monocle and a top hat. Haha. Words are beautiful. Gasoline fights are so fun though.
What?
Dude.
Connor.
That thing was scary, bro. What the hell?
That was scary, man. Well, it's
Told you,
true, man. He will do it. He
I know he wants to do it.
It works on a few levels there, you know. So
he wants everybody to go to Mars. Fucking wow, nice job, man.
yeah.
Man,
Thank you, sir.
he can go first. I'm a little bit.
I think he should be the advanced scout for our Mars colony.
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
We were going to send a chimp, but we got Elon. Why waste a chimp? Anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, high five. We were talking about Elon Musk. I just have to remind you.
Elon Musk is fucking problem.
And that is our show, ladies and
Thanks.
gentlemen.
There you go, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Wow.
Happy Father's Day.
Well done, Connor.